witches.
Hi, hello. Man.
Okay. Guys, it's been a wild week, let me tell you. If you watch the YouTube, you'll notice that my area looks a little different than usual. There's a cute little cat in the background back there. Because we got a dog on a Tuesday.
Going
And I'm
up
so
on a
tired.
Tuesday.
But he's adorable and I will post pictures. But anyway, it is now Thursday and we are here to talk to you about some folklore. Folklore. Blah, 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 blah,
Folklore.
folklore. Some folklore. I'm going to talk about the succubus. And all of my information that I'm going to share is from mythologian.net, which they have a lot of different monsters and mythological creatures. But then I also have another website that if I have time, I'm going to go to and talk to you about succubi and pop culture, which I probably will have time because, like I was telling Emily before we got started here, I started researching about an hour ago. So here we go. Most people probably already know what a succubus is, but just in case you don't, it's like a supernatural entity or demon that manifests itself as a beautiful woman. Well, most cases say that it's a beautiful woman. This mythical creature appears in men's dreams and seduces them into performing sexual acts. As I was doing the research, I was like, but what if it's a lesbian? But like, or like what if there's a lesbian? Would it still be an incubus that came to them, or would it be a succubus? But a lot of the lore around these creatures are that they are doing this for reproductive reasons. So there wouldn't be a lot of like LGBTQIA references in succubus. Although in some of the pop culture characters, there obviously is some, like if you've been listening, our favorite succubus Nox is a lesbian or interested in women anyway. But it says repeated encounters with a succubus can cause a person to lose their physical and mental health or die, like if it's a severe case. The word succubus first originated in the late 1300s, which is the 14th century, and was derived from the Latin term succubare, which means to lie beneath. So, and then on the flip side of that, incubus, I think means to lie above or to something along those lines. Because of the succubus is going to be on the bottom in the traditional sexual positions. Some stories say that she only appears in a person's dreams, but others say that she would manifest physically. It depends on the specific lore. A lot of the ones that I'm going to talk about today, they are physical beings. In most modern literature and media, the succubus has been portrayed as an extremely beautiful, voluptuous, and desirable woman. Sometimes they'll have like horns or a barbed tail or fangs, wings, or most commonly glowing eyes. Their eyes glow. However, in like the medieval times, they were described as like deformed and grotesque demons. They had faces like gargoyles. They had clawed feet. Their fingers had long, ragged claws. They were basically like horrific. which I didn't research this part, but I wonder if some of that has to do with like conflating succubi and vampires, because vampires are typically thought to be really beautiful creatures and they have similar like powers, I guess, to a succubus, but I don't know. That's just me speculating. I don't know if that's true or not, so don't get mad at me if that's not.
I think they have. I think they both come from like similar things, but I think the vampire we understand today is a very skewed version of like
Yeah.
the folklore version.
Yeah. Because in a lot of older folklore too, vampires are really ugly. I think modern
Nosferatu.
culture, yeah. I think modern culture kind of like romanticizes some of these like demons and monsters. But we love
Yeah.
it. Obviously, we read it. um, the first mention of the term succubus was in the late 14th century, like I said, and there's a few different versions of the myth. One claims that a succubus is a female demon that is basically stealing sperm and to become pregnant, while the male counterpart, the incubus, is impregnating women to procreate. Other versions claim that the succubus and incubus are one entity and they're just a shapeshifter. So like they first become a succubus and steal the human sperm, and then they transform into the incubus to put the sperm into a different like
Host.
into a human woman. So
Oh,
there's different, yeah, like there's different um versions of the myth.
that's
Different
weird.
religions even have versions of this myth. For example, um, Christianity folklore tells a tale of a woman named Lilith who later turned into a succubus. Lilith, if you know any of the story, was supposed to be Adam's first wife, who was created at the same time as him but before Eve. She later left Adam, um, and there's lots of conjecture or reasons why people say she left Adam, but one of the most famous is she left him to mate with the archangel Samael, and she refused to return to Eden. And this transformed her into a succubus, and her children were basically demons known as Lilims, and they were sent out into the world where they became lesser succubi. So she was basically like the mother succubus in this situation. But some writers in this vein don't believe that the succubus was actually evil. There was supposedly a succubus named, which this is wild to me, this cracks me up. There was a succubus named Meridiana who was supposedly involved with Pope Sylvester II and helped him like grow and gain his clout. And before his death, he supposedly confessed to his sins and said that a succubus helped him do all of this, which is kind of wild. Popes be wildin', I don't know. There are also versions of Lilith as the succubus in Sumerian, Roman, Greek, and Egyptian legends as the mother of all succubi. So people are really like, Lilith is the origin story for succubus. In Sumer legends, Lilith was first worshipped as a goddess of fertility, agriculture, and witchcraft. But later she was associated with night demons that stole babies and eat them. So,
Who did that?
Lilith.
It's like a
This is in
Yada.
Sumerian
Baba Yada.
folklore. Right.
Oh, okay.
So she was associated with night demons that stole babies and ate them. So this is wild. And then we move on to Greek mythology. Lilith was known as Lamia, I think is how you pronounce it. It might be Lamia, and was given an extensive backstory. So in this legend, she's a beautiful woman who's transformed into a hideous monster by Hera, who became jealous of her because, Zeus just sticks his dick in everything. So Hera gets pissed and turns Lilith or Lamia into a monster. After she turns into a monster, she wanders the world seducing men and eating children, which, is pretty tame actually for Greek mythology, but whatever.
Honestly.
Other stories in the Greek mythology claim that Lamia was the mother to Zeus's two children, or to two of Zeus's children. When Hera found out about her husband's deception, instead of punishing Zeus, she cursed Lamia into a Gorgon-like monster with a snake type monster, similar to Medusa, which is pretty on par for Hera and Zeus, I feel. So
Yeah.
that's pretty legit sounding. A few other myths. Another Greek myth is that Zeus hid Lamia in a cave and gave her permission to kill any person who dared enter her territory. Which I don't like that one as much, but whatever. I don't know. I'm not Greek. I'm not ancient, so could be. Lamia also appeared in Old English legends, but she was called the Lamia in the English legends. She appeared as a beautiful woman in graveyards and would lure young men to their deaths by basically manipulating them and pretending to be like a damsel in distress and needing assistance. The legend claims that if you see a woman in need of help in graveyards, you should call out to her because the Lamia cannot answer you back in a human voice, and because they have a snake tongue, and so they can only hiss. So if you call out to them and they respond back to you in any kind of human language, it is probably not the Lamia.
Maybe you just don't do it.
Yeah, maybe just stay out of graveyards, guys. I don't know. Sorry, I got lost where my notes are. So that was probably a really weird noise, but you're welcome. In the Middle Ages, the succubus appeared in the night to seduce men into sexual encounters. This sounds a lot more like the modern version of succubus. This lore was especially exploited and taken advantage of by celibate monks who claimed they were attacked by a succubus and blamed the succubus for any sexual thoughts, desires, or dreams that they had. So basically, they were just looking for a scapegoat for being human. And what better scapegoat than a beautiful woman? That's what we like to do here. There was also some almost witch hunt type things happening because there were women who, if any woman tried to be sexually forward with a man in the medieval times, they could be accused of being a succubi in disguise. And any of them who became pregnant outside of wedlock were said to have fraternized with incubi. So, just yet another legend or folklore that attacks and attempts to control women, especially women's sexuality. Always, yeah. We should be used to it by now. It's just a thing. After the start of the Renaissance, the succubus legend was a little less popular, because the original succubus legend was ugly gargoyle looking things, right? But as we know, in the Renaissance, artists liked beautiful naked people, So they kind of preferred the story of Lamia, who was cursed in Greek mythology, so they kind of went that way with it, which actually kind of shows you where the turn started to happen from these ugly, like monstrous creatures to more beautiful creatures. But then in the late 18th century, Gothic literature became a thing. Like, yes, just, I mean, we know what Gothic literature is, right? Like, everybody knows. So the succubus made a comeback in that, but it says, like I was just explaining, between the 14th century when they first started being discussed to the late 18th century when they were being used in this Gothic literature, they turned from hideous monsters into beautiful beings that were like seducing men and stealing their sperm. So, and like, it's not just the late 1800s that there are books about them. There are lots of succubi in pop culture. So it was actually a really good segue from that research to this. This website is super basic website. It's called Famous Fix. But it's about the different succubi in pop culture. So the very first one, I've never seen this movie, but I just said the name of this movie, and Brittany was like, yeah, with Megan Fox. So there's a movie called Jennifer's Body. Yeah. I've never seen it, but it's a 2009 American supernatural horror comedy film with Megan Fox, Amanda Seyfried, Johnny Simmons, and Adam Brody. She's a newly possessed high school cheerleader. She turns into a succubus who specializes in killing her male classmates. Can her best friend put an end to the horror? That is Jennifer's Body. My favorite, and this is saying something because we all know that I really like The Night in Its Moon with Knox, but my favorite succubi in pop culture is Beau in Lost Girl. Lost Girl was a Canadian supernatural TV show. It's very similar to Supernatural, actually. Like, they like solve supernatural crimes, and but something that was new for me when I finally watched this was that Beau is bisexual, and she feeds on the energy of humans. It's a little bit different than some of the traditional succubus legends. She like sucks their essence out of their mouth kind of thing. But she can also give essence back to them, kind of like Knox does in what's it called? But if you haven't watched Lost Girl, I don't know where you can watch it now. When I watched it, it was on Netflix. I don't believe it's still on Netflix. But if you haven't watched it, I 110% recommend it. It is the best. And I am not really a TV person, but that's a good show. Number 3 on this list is Case 39. I never even heard of this, but it's a 2009 American supernatural horror film. It's starring Renee Zellweger. I think that's how you say that. But it's a social worker fights to save a girl from her abusive parents, only to discover that the situation is more dangerous than she ever expected.
You can watch Lost Girl on Amazon Prime or Apple TV. It's free on Apple TV, Freevee, and it's pretty cheap if you want to watch it on Amazon Prime.
Perfect. I love it. It's amazing, and I highly recommend it. There's another one. She's the main protagonist in Capcom's Darkstalkers, and her name is the Morrigan. Apparently Anita Blake. Again, I'm reading off a list right now. I don't actually know all of these, but Anita Blake is the title and viewpoint character of the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series. Sounds interesting. World of Warcraft apparently has succubi in it. There's lots. It's lots. And like I said, this is famous fics. If you want to look at the rest of the list, there's like hundreds on the list. So I'm not going to read the whole list. But the reason that we chose to do succubi this week is because of Nox in The Night and Its Moon. So you're welcome.
Damn.
Excuse me. Springtime.
Honestly, though. So she talked about succubi, and I'm going to talk about fae or fairies. So most of these, I guess, folklore myths, whatever, actually come from the European cultures. So mainly Celtic, Slavic, Germany, or the Germanic area, English, and French folklore. They're often considered a spirit or like a form of a spirit, kind of supernatural, basically. There have been a lot of myths and stories about this and a lot of things. Like if you are a part of any kind of like witchy community thing on any social media, there's a lot of people who would be like, well, look, fairies visited me, and like it's just a bunch of mushrooms that grew in a circle, and they call that a fairy circle. They also say don't go near it or fuck with it or try to break it, because fairies are not always the nicest of people. But regardless of that, there's not necessarily like a single origin, so everything is going to be just slightly different depending on where you're at. For instance, there's like two different places, or two different locations that have different fae ideas. So Scotland and Ireland are going to have two different ones compared to everybody else. And a lot of people actually believe that these fae people were the original deities in the pagan belief system, before it's like pre-Christian days. Basically like the spirits of the dead. And some people, I mean, theoretically speaking, think that fae were like the prehistoric precursors to humans. So like this is people that lived prior to the first man. And regardless if you want to believe that or the dinosaurs or whatever the case may be, that's up to you. But anyways, so most people will spell fairy Fairy, but some other ones will actually spell it Fae, Fay, or the Fae, like Ri, or Fairie. Oh, look at that spelling.
I saw a meme the other day actually that said like, I love how we as a human race like have just refused to solidify the spelling of the word fairy. Like
Yeah.
everybody, like all of literature spells it different.
Yeah, it depends on the vibe. Do you want like a Disney-like esque creature? Then you're gonna do like Fairy.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do mythical, like magical, I guess super good looking beings, then it's like Fae.
Yeah.
That's it. Depending on the vibe you want, that's how you're gonna spell it. But anyways, some places like the Old French believe that fairies, Old French, ancient cultures in the French area, believe that fairies is actually derived from Latin for fates. So supposedly the fairies predict what could and could not happen, and like they chop it as the fates do in Greek mythology. Um, but regardless of that, they old French believe that it was actually Fae was actually like a woman skilled in magic. So if you were a woman skilled in magic, you were Fae, like no matter what. There was like no male version of you. And you were the person who did that. You knew the power and the virtue of words, of stones and leaves and runes and all that kind of stuff. It was supposed to be representing of like an enchantment, like the land of the fays kind of stuff. But modern English decided to change fae to fairy, which is kind of how we have that spelling now, which just refers to one person. So the land of the fairies, it's your one fairy, like that's who it is. Latin and Germanic areas, basically, it's just the way they have it. Oh, wait, no, I read that wrong. So Latin Fae is not related to the Germanic Fae. Apparently, the Germanic version means fated to die, whereas the Latin one is not that. But they also think that that might have been influenced by the French culture area. So apparently it was meaning like it slightly shifted to fated from the earlier doomed or accursed kind of thing. And then some other people believe fairies are small people, so they call them the wee folk. Whatever the case may be, it's just weird. And they actually have some Persian mythology, like of fairies in a way. But mainly you're going to see more Eastern European in terms of fae descriptions. So fairies are generally described as human with magical powers. So they're going to have some people believed that they were quite tiny, all the way that they could range from quite tiny all the way up to like the size of a human. They were not really consistent, they were just assumed. So there's not a lot of historical work stating such from that, like folklore. But sometimes they were short in some things describe them as short in stature, dressed in all dark gray, and then sometimes armor, while others believe them to be carefree, pixie-like beings in the woods. So like barefoot.
Tinkerbell.
Yeah, Tinkerbell. Like, well,
she's not so carefree, I guess.
Yeah.
Although I totally vibe with Tinkerbell in the way that if she doesn't get attention, she dies, because same.
That's funny. But in some folklore, fairies had green eyes, which is why there's some people believe that if you have green eyes or similar green eyes, that you are part fae or related to fae ancestry. But once you got kind of into like the Victorian artworks, fairies became pretty rare. They started diving in deep in other types of folklore rather than, enjoying what you had right in front of you. When they did pop up, they didn't actually have wings. They just kind of flew around by means of magic, and they like to perch on stems or the backs of birds. So I'm kind of picturing like Thumbelina and like Ferngully. That is what I'm kind of picturing with that. And then most modern ones will include dragonfly or butterfly wings. But it's not really consistent about what they look like because everything's been kind of shaped by like their own local area. So we don't really have like one consistent version of it. So that's probably why we just don't sit there and say, we're going to spell fairy like this instead of like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so some other people will actually believe that they are fallen angels in a way, some kind of demon. I think that where is that? Oh, it's not even specific. It's just folklorists and mythologists will just kind of do that. So, like, they're the children of Eve, a kind of demon. They're species independent of humans. They're an older race of humans and fallen angels. Those are some things that they would like, instead of calling themselves like fairy, that's like their children of Eden kind of thing, which is kind of weird. Not Eden, Eve. Some folklorists will have suggested that fairies arose from various earlier beliefs, which obviously was lost with the including of Christianity in most modern, not modern, but popular artwork and all of that. Some other places with Christian beliefs actually believe fae people are demoted angels, which is why they're able to complete their like do magic and look like angels, but they're not. And there's actually people who have written works in like the 1600s talking about fae and how their background is mainly demons and that they're just fallen angels, and which is also why they're seen as attractive. Well, not attractive, but like
Right.
they're not bad looking beings. With the I like how this is worded. With the predominance of the Christian church, it was thought that these fairies were originally worshipped as deities, such as nymphs and tree spirits. But due to the Christian church, some of these deities have carried on. However, it's more monotheistic than prior. And there's actually, I think, some Victorian fiction by the works of W.B. Yeats that like repurposed as fairy, but they're like deities of older folklore. So that's pretty cool. Some of them will actually call them changelings. But here's the thing about changelings. Changelings are replacement beings for stolen human children. So if I was a child and I was stolen at a young age to replace like the human me, they would give a fae child. Which is why some people, if they were like sick or if they were afflicted with some kind of disease, disorders, or developmental disabilities, they think that it was part fae because of the things that these kids would do.
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. Not us, but I was talking the other day at work about this and how like forever ago, like 1700s, probably even earlier than that, people thought like they would wake up one day and their child was just a totally different child. Like they didn't speak anymore. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. Which is, if you know anything about autism, that's like textbook autism. So like we were talking about how like a lot of people would be like, it's a changeling. And unfortunately, like a lot of the times when they suspected that their child was a changeling, they would kill their children. Like rather than have like this evil entity living in their house, they would murder their own children. So like it was sad. I'm smiling right now for some reason. I think it's just I'm so tired, but like it's not a smiling matter. It's like super sad that would happen.
Many things were different and no one understood. Which is why they have like books. Yeah. But yeah, so like other than like demoted angels, pagan deities, demons, supposedly spirits of the dead. Because there's a few things in the Irish folklore where it talks about different places that these people can go to. But what is it? Oh, so much of the books in the works that you'll see on fairies basically involves methods of protecting yourself from them because they're mean. They're not nice. They have some pretty bad rep. Sometimes cold iron is supposedly able to help you. Charms of rowan trees and various herbs. Shunning locations known to be there. So, like, if you're walking through the forest, don't go off the beaten path. Like, stay where you are, because if that's where they live, then that's theirs, and so you don't go that way. Which might lead up to why, like, there's different fairy tales, like Red Riding Hood. How she's supposed to, like, stick to her, like how she's going and not stray from the path, kind of stuff. Like Hansel and Gretel. Well, okay, that one's a little different, but like a little different. But I mean, in the idea of like, don't do this, don't do that kind of thing. Like, just ways to scare kids into not like going away into the woods. So, and then also doing things that would hopefully not offend any fairies. So if you were offending a fairy, harmful pranks could be brought upon you, and that is dangerous. Some of the less harmful pranks are described as tangling the hair of sleepers into fairy locks or elf locks, which is like like a braid essentially. Stealing small items to where they can't find them, and leading a traveler astray. Obviously, the more dangerous ones could be any form of sudden death, and it could be fairy kidnapping, the evident corpse of a magical replica of wood. And actually, some people blame tuberculosis on fairies because it forced young men and women to dance every night, causing them to waste away from lack of rest. Rowan trees are considered to be sacred to fairies and a charm tree to protect one's home. So if you had a tree or maybe a charm of that tree, you can protect your home from fairies. There are some classifications of fairies, but there's somebody who, where is it? Oh, it's a British historian, Dr. Simon Young, claims that classification varies widely from researcher to researcher and pointed out that it does not necessarily reflect old beliefs. So you need to be careful and advise against dividing up into different classifications. But for those who have, these are terms popularized by W.B. Yeats. So trooping fairies are those who appear in groups and might have formed settlements, as opposed to solitary fairies who do not live or associate with others of their kind. The term fairy is usually held in a wider sense, including various similar beings such as dwarves and elves of Germanic folklore. In Scottish folklore, though, fairies are divided into the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court. So the Seelie Court are the less harmful pranks, like the giving of braids, taking something that's not theirs kind of thing. However, those of the Unseelie Court have brought harm to humans for entertainment. Either could be dangerous to humans if offended. So be careful what you do, say, or whatever in areas known to be fairy woods. But some other one, they also say a four-leaf clover is regarded as good luck charm. specifically against fairies, which is probably why it's very close to the Irish like protection charm kind of thing because of all of that. And there's like a bunch of different ways to like protect yourselves against fairy. In Newfoundland, the most popular type of fairy protection is bread. It varies from stale bread to hardtack or a slice of fresh homemade bread. But it's associated with home and the hearth and the industry and the taming of nature. So it's like you are trying to be one with nature in a way. So like if you use that, you are not offending the fairies and you are actually offering them that. And it's as a sign of protection. In much of the Celtic folklore, though, baked goods or traditional offering to the folk are cream and butter. I'd be okay with that. Let me just go back up to Newfoundland, get me some bread, come back down, get me some butter. Irish butter is so good. I don't know what it is, but like Kerrygold, best butter around. And it's probably not even like legitimate Irish butter, but it's the only one I know, and it's great. Let's see. In 1882, in County Wexford, Ireland, it was actually reported that an infant is carried out after dark. A piece of bread is wrapped in its bib or dress, and it protects it from witchcraft or evil. If an infant is carried out after dark, so like if you have to leave your like at night, carry a piece of bread in its clothes to protect your baby. Right? They also say
snack.
They also say bells have an ambiguous role. They protect you against fairies. The fairies riding on horseback, such as the Fairy Queen. And what is it? So that'll protect you against them. It's actually funny in the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court, which is the Scottish folklore idea. Other fairies use these bells to protect themselves from more wicked members of their race. So, like, they actually use it themselves.
Okay.
And another one is, this is ambiguous. It's obviously not like, there's no constant information on anything. But a cock's crow in the morning drove away fairies from the evening. But then also in other places, it shows that fairies actually keep poultry. So then it's like, is that really going to protect you or not? But farmlands, obviously, everyone's got like a rooster of some sort. That always like wakes you up in the morning.
People trying to make themselves feel safe.
Yeah. It's kind of like when we go to Akatar and like everyone's like wearing something made of iron, even though like that has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
That's basically like the same idea behind it. And you know, people like us who not necessarily think all fae are bad, we are the people who would probably lose our fucking shit in the middle of the woods if we were to come in contact with something like this. Like, we'd be the people, we'd be like children of the blessed. We'd be like, come let us in. And everyone all around us is like, man, these are like crazy people.
These bitches be crazy.
Like, no. Yeah, that's what it is. Let's see, what else? Ooh, fairies like to confuse travelers while they're on their path by offering themselves up as a will-o'-the-wisp.
Oh.
So certain locations known to be haunts of fairies are to be avoided. C.S. Lewis actually reported hearing of a cottage more feared for its reported fairies than its reported ghost. So digging in fairy hills are very unwise. Paths that the fairies travel are also wise to avoid. Homeowners have knocked corners from their houses because the corner blocked the fairy path, and cottages have been built with the front and back doors in line so that the owners could, in need, leave them both open and let the fairies troop through all night. Locations such as fairy forts were left undisturbed. Even cutting brush on fairy forts was reputed to be the death of those who performed the act. Fairy trees, or thorn trees, are dangerous to chop down. One such tree was left alone in Scotland, though it prevented a road from being widened for 70 years. Wow. That's kind of weird. But, if that's what you grew up believing. And, if it wasn't so, like, obviously nowadays we wouldn't leave our, like, doors open like that. But
Fresh air's for dead people.
the world is burning with carbon monoxide. Let's see. In Scotland, these are some legends. So in Scotland, it was peculiar to a fairy woman to assume the shape of a deer, while witches became mice, hares, cats, gulls, or black sheep. Um, yes,
He
you
would like to
sane,
leave.
right? Um, there's actually Sir Orfeo. I did not look up these pronunciations, so I apologize in ahead. But his wife was kidnapped by the king of fairies, and only by trickery and an excellent harping ability was he able to win her back. And this is from the, I think it's a short, I wouldn't call it a short story, but like a myth of some sort. Um, there's actually a lot of them for just European folklores. Are you okay? Like, is your cat okay?
He is. He's just being a butt nugget. Kemper, come here.
Um,
It's about time for him to
so,
have dinner.
oh. So there's some other part of the legends where it shows, what is it? How do I pronounce it? Fuck, I don't know. Because it's in Celtic. I know it's not. How I'm going to. There's probably some like hidden letters that I don't know about, and there's also probably some words that don't get pronounced. But anyways, um, there is a race of supernaturally gifted people in Irish mythology. They were thought to represent the main deities of pre-Christian Ireland. So what I was saying about earlier. Many of the Irish modern tales of these people refer to the beings as fairies. Though in more ancient times they were regarded to as goddesses or gods. Um, According to this tale of these people, um, these people have come from islands in the north of the world, or in other sources from the sky. After being defeated in a series of battles with otherworldly beings, and then by the ancestors of the current Irish people, they were said to have withdrawn to the fairy mounds. Wait a second. I think about this for a second. You know how we've made comments about Piper CJ and SJM doing research about folklore before like setting up like world building and that kind of stuff to like kind of get an idea about it.
Mm-hmm.
What if SJM looked up what is it, this particular race of gifted people from Irish mythology to create her people? So like something they're spoken of having come from islands in the north of the world or from the sky. I
I like
mean,
it.
we got some people in the sky because they
We
like to
do.
fly around a lot.
We do.
Um, and they also went to a battle with the people, the ancestors, and other worldly beings. So what if they're talking about the battle with Hybern?
Ooh, I like
That
it.
just came to me. I didn't even think about that until just now. But anyways, so they live in the fairy mounds where they lived on in popular imagination as fairies. They're also associated with several otherworld realms, including Mamel, which is also said it is the pleasant plane. I think this is like a place where if you died in battle or glory or something like that, somehow you ended up here. But it was actually like a pleasurable paradise and not like in Norse mythology, like when you go to um, Valhalla, like you're basically just fighting nonstop.
Right.
Every so often you like run out to battle and then you die on the field and then you come back and that's the rest of your life. I think that's kind of similar to that. Um, Another place called Ivana Block, Evan Block. um, that one is the place of apples. This is a mythical island paradise. It is regarded as the realm of the sea god. So I don't know how you would get there or why you would go there, but these people are associated with this. And then the last one is Tir na Nog, which is the land of youth, which I think is like the heaven, like the Celtic heaven.
Okay.
Um, and actually, Celtic women have a song called the Tir na Nog,
Hmm.
and I really like it. It's a really good one. Anyways, so another Irish term, of course, I don't know how to pronounce that either. Um,
Listen, those
this
those languages are hard.
I know, and I'm trying to learn them, but I was like, I need to learn one language before I learned a different language. So I'm just working back through Russian right now. And I have a long way to go. So it's going to be a while. But there is another supernatural race in Ireland. It's comparable to fairies or elves. So these are probably like the tall, slenderizing kind of groups. The spirits of nature. Some people say that they're ancestors of the gods or goddesses, or gods or the goddesses. Um, this is a common theme found among the Celtic nations, but they describe a race of people who had been driven out by invading humans. And there is fairy lore. People of the fairy mounds is what this term says. It's like Alcy, Alcy, AC, something. Um, are immortals living in the ancient barrows and cairns. And they also say that the Irish banshee, who is known as woman of the fairy mound, is sometimes described as a ghost. So the banshee also, other than like it being a ghost, is related to the supernatural race that are similar to fairies or elves.
Because typically, isn't a banshee like a portent of death? Like if you see a banshee, then that means you're
Or
gonna
you
die,
hear it.
or
You
you hear,
hear it.
yeah.
If you see it, I think how it is if you hear it, a loved one dies. If you see it, you die. Or you're
Okay.
going to die, something like that. Kind of like when you see a crow, someone's like, "Oh God, it's an omen." Um,
There are crows everywhere around here, so that if it's an omen, then just shit.
right. Um, oh, somebody wrote a book called "The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies" back in 1691. Um, they use the word Sith, and I think that's funny, but it's Scottish, so I don't think it's Sith. It's probably something different. But they actually have their own thing, and they call themselves the good people. They're middle nature between man and angel, as were demons thought to be of old. Um, they are also believed to be intelligent, fluidous spirits, trans people. And light changeable bodies, like those called astral. So like when you're astral projecting, that kind of thing. And they believe it's something similar to that of a condensed cloud, best seen in twilight. That's kind of cool. So it's like winnowing away, but like with a poof.
I like it.
So that's actually pretty cool. Most Christians have a negative or skeptical regarding creatures such as fairies or nature spirits. Most of them, some of them have positive terms for that, but most of them are going to be negative. There's actually excerpts from it. One of them is talking about how like we need to regard them with like respect as we would ourselves, and then the other times it's like, no, screw these people, this is our land kind of idea. And they actually brought in J.R.R. Tolkien for it as well. 1930, he made a comment about it because of the way he grew up versus like how some of these city folks are growing up, and then how like their idea of folklore has changed compared to his. But I don't really give a shit about the Christian whatever. But sometimes some of them actually, what is it? Something about they are ethereal beings is basically what they are. Fae folk or fair folk. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people will say pixies and fae are the same thing, like pixies and fairies. And, you know, when you think about it, it's kind of like interchangeable. However, according to folklorists, that is incorrect. Fairies and pixies are fictitious characters. However, fairies are just like miniature human beings with large wings on their backs, whereas pixies have colored skin and hair with butterfly wings, and they are significantly smaller. So they're going to be like bug-sized. Ugh. Which is why some people in like witchcraft groups will be like, look at my Ring doorbell footage. Do you think that's a pixie or a fairy? And then some people are like, that's a pixie. Like, blah, blah, blah. And other people are like, that's a moth. Get over it. Really just depends.
That's
but
a moth.
In terms of witchcraft, this actually has something to do with it. So, what is it? The Fae at Beltane. So, Beltane is a pagan holiday that people, celebrate, and it's actually coming up here soon. But this is traditionally a time believed to be when the veil between our world and that of the Fae are thin. So the Fae has kept themselves unless they wanted something from their human neighbors. It was uncommon for them to travel through. However, on Beltane, that veil is super, super thin that humans can travel over to, like, through the veil into their world.
No, thank you.
But it's most of the tales were going to be that these humans got too daring for the Fae and ultimately paid their price for their curiosity. But most fairy stories will just divide them up into peasants and aristocracy. But there are many different types of fairies, but you're going to get like high fae basically and lesser fae. How SJM likes to talk about it. And some people believe that these guys actually live underground because they were forced underground from human invasions. So if you see, like, like how I think it's Ohio or someplace have like mounds, and a lot of people believe that the Indian tribes of that area have done that. Maybe it's a fairy mound, and maybe that's why those groups left, or not left, but vanished.
Right.
But either way,
I like it.
Don't fuck with the Fae, apparently, is what I'm getting from the majority of this research thing. But it's all over the place. Like, there's just so much, and I use like 8 different places.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Sorry, my eye just like
Anyways,
did a weird thing. But anyway, yay. This was fun.
hold on.
Oh,
My
are you finding?
technical difficulty here.
Uh-oh.
Always. It's these stupid headphones. I really just need to stop using them. Let's be real. They just cost me so much more money, and I don't want to deal with that. I know. They're like $200.
Yikes.
All right. Oh, I hear you. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, good. Yay. Well,
And
anyway,
they're charged. Anyways, what were you saying?
I was saying that this was fun.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next round of folklore.
I like it. Yes, we will continue doing folklore episodes here and there. I think our next couple we're gonna do The Night and Its Moon. We're gonna cover Beltane, then The Night and Its Moon again, and then I think that concludes April. So we're doing it. And I think that second Night and
Beltane, I
Its
think, is in
Moon,
May.
but it's at the very beginning of May, right? So we're
Yeah, I think
doing.
so. I don't know. Anyways, regardless.
But I think those next two Night and Its Moon episodes, I think we will probably finish the book.
Oh, yeah, I think we only have 2 left.
Yeah.
What should we do
So-
next? Should we go on to that one? Should we go to a different series? Should we try to return and finish up SJM series?
Yes. What
That would
should
be
we
the
do
next
next?
deciding
Let us
factor.
know.
Also, be on the lookout for social media if you're interested in crystals and tarot cards. We're going to start actually doing posts on them.
Yes.
We just,
one post a week, like a crystal of the week and a card of the week.
yeah, kind of thing. So if you're interested in learning more about them, stay
Check
tuned.
out our TikTok or our Instagram, not Twitter. We don't have Twitter. Or our Facebook page.
Did you know we could actually get a LinkedIn account?
We can? That's weird.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. I was like, that's kind of weird, but okay.
That is super weird.
Gotta get your professional business out there somehow. Anyways, until next time. Bye.
Bye.